For now, let's get to talk about integrated ethical AI practices to ensure fairness and transparency when it comes to technology. How is it that we can manage risks associated with artificial intelligence while staying adaptable to rapid technology advancements? And how is it that we can use the right kind of strategies? Talking to about all these features will be our next set of speakers. Please welcome them on stage, and may I request for the slide up so that they can take a seat accordingly. Let's hear it up for Mr. Ashton de Cruz, Executive Director at NetWest Markets. A round of applause as I present to you Mr. Abhivardhan, Chairperson and Managing Trustee at Indian Society of Artificial Intelligence and Law. And to moderate these wonderful speakers, may I present to you Mr. Rohan, Padhi, Partner Advisory at KPMG. A round of applause for all three of them, please. Welcome. Let's look forward to a very interesting conversation unfolding right here.
Am I audible? Thank you. Very warm good morning to all of you. I am really privileged today to have in the panel Mr. Ashton, who is a practitioner, and Abhivardhan, who is, I would say, an influential policymaker. And the theme that we are going to discuss today is around responsible AI, right? AI has been the buzzword, as the speakers before me have also alluded to. But there is always that, in the back of your mind, a thought that while AI today is galloping really fast, are there enough checks and balances to control of what could be some of the intended and unintended harmful effects of AI? And this is where, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be having a discussion today. All of us know that over the past some years, there has been a raft of regulations which have centered around AI. One of my, Akhilesh, who was speaking before me, alluded to the fact that there are about 37 countries who are now drafting regulations in various stages. We also know that the EU AI Act has almost come into force, which mandates a set of activities that that companies in the critical sector, like let's say defense, healthcare, etc., need to do around AI. So without any further ado, let me just straight get to the point. And I'll start off with you, Ashton, since you are a practitioner of AI. What is your philosophy of ingraining, different aspects of what constitutes trustworthy AI, whether it's fairness, whether it is explainability, whether it's safety on the models that you would typically build out for your company?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Rohan. First and foremost, a very good morning to all the participating delegates. I must thank ETH and the Times Group for inviting me and having me as part of this panel. So before I address your question, I must also state that views expressed, opinions shared here are in my personal capacity, may or may not be subscribed by my employer or the organization and professional bodies I'm associated with. Okay, coming now to your question, ethical AI, fairness, trustworthiness of AI. So as you rightly mentioned, the keynote speakers who spoke earlier this morning have alluded to the advent of AI and the transformation we have in terms of technical innovation that we have, which have transformed both organizations, industries, and even our personal lives. However, as AI has begun to influence our lives, we also need to be very aware of the ethical dilemmas, as you rightly put it, that could be caused in terms of our societal norms and values. Okay, and what I mean by this is AI has been advancing. So we started from basic machine learning algorithms or rule-based AI, which used to compute what a decision or a response to the consumer, to more of a synonymous and adaptive behavior or learning-based AI, which now is able to provide you with the solutions and decisions minus human intervention. But the key aspect of utilizing this AI is to be able to see that it is minus any ethical concerns. And when I mean ethical concerns, it could be related to security, it could be related to biases within decisions, or it could be related to lack of transparency in your decision-making process. Okay, so these are some of the considerations that we need to really look at. And how can we best look at it is by putting a key principle where the well-being of the person or the individual or the human is kept at the center of any decision that an AI tool or a solution or an application makes. So some key principles that I would have proposed or put forward, or something that I think about, to call out some of them, as I already stated: human well-being and dignity. So any AI decision, any AI solution has always to cater to this basic aspect of human well-being and dignity. The other one that would be in terms of fairness and impartiality. So let your AI tool not look at principal bias. Let your AI tool not look at bias due to genders, due to racial biasing, etc. and all. Fairness and impartiality is key. We also need to consider something around transparency and accountability. Okay, transparency is basically where we are able to have a clear way and explainability of what the decision is, why the decision has come up to, and have the accountability to be able to own up the decision. Not to forget the last part and the most important part is around data privacy and data security. So these are the key aspects that we will look from a principles perspective. At the same time, it is also key to note that simply adopting these principles do not mean effective AI or ethical AI. Because it has to be integrated into your various technical operational processes. There has to be collaboration, not just between a silo engineering on an IT team, but across collaboration panning across roles, disciplines, even industries, or even nations. So you have to have that possible international cooperation around policy formation. You need to have collaboration, interdisciplinary research and innovation, involving even law, social sciences, humanities, across various spheres. And then the most important part is also public information and education. Okay. Again, I will end with saying key to all of this is the human being at the center of not only the well-being of it, but also in terms of the decision-making. Accountability should stay with the humans. They should be in a position to be able to intervene any decision that the AI takes, because responsible AI, in my view, is maintaining a right balance between responsible practices and optimal performance. Thank you.
I think very important points that, Ashton, that you have raised, right? And if I were to summarize some of the key takeaways from what you mentioned, I think easily the most important one being keeping the human being at the center of everything. Not only, let's say, from a safety and a trust perspective, where the human being could be a user, or let's say an impacted user because of AI, and on the other side, as a maker of AI as well, somebody who, who is accountable and responsible for whatever decisions or predictions that the AI model is bringing. Another interesting point that you mentioned, which I thought is worth highlighting to the group, is around inter-country collaboration. And I'm sure that, that since you work for NetWest, right, which is again a global multinational company, you would have different silos, different operating principles, which could be contextualized for different countries. So now I understand that why is it so important to bring all of them together so that you have a more unified and a harmonized approach in terms of the development and deployment of AI. Thank you so much. And moving on to you, Abhivardhan, maybe your thoughts around what could some firms do to integrate fairness and other trust principles into their AI processes?
Sure. I was patiently listening to your points, and I certainly appreciate them with utmost respect. And you mentioned about international cooperation. And before I actually come to your esteemed question, this kind of reminds me of the nature of what we call, as in the field of IP law, since I'm from the legal side, we call it patent cooperation treaty. So for example, companies which are in telecom or any important sector where a lot of patents are filed and agreed upon, and patent usage rights are settled as to how companies will use it, vendors will use it. Patent cooperation treaties help a lot when a lot of IP offices, like in Japan or Singapore, India. So PCTs help a lot to bridge on certain IP rights. Similar can be done in the case of AI, because recently WIPO, in partnership with a firm, released a report about the rise of Gen AI patents and publications. So I think when AI software patents are becoming a norm and there will be some legal challenges which will be contested, I think some AI cooperation avenues will happen. Some will happen at a bilateral level, like countries will do it, some diplomatic agreements. Some will happen, between the Asia Pacific divisions or Western divisions, howsoever it is. But on your question per se, when we look at corporate governance, I think the one issue is, of course, there are different layers. We see that board of directors take a decision. There are aspects of confidentiality. But I think what is going to affect largely is more around the necessity of knowledge management in AI. Because certain things remain confidential, they will be. But the utility and the aspect of how do you associate, like how do you do things, how do you attribute, I think that changes a lot. Now, that doesn't necessarily need to come to compliance because sometimes, again, I think the keynote speaker very rightly mentioned that there are around 30 to 40 regulations and regulatory documents just keep piling up. And I think, as I remember, as far as my understanding is, it all started with the Bletchley Declaration.
Yeah.
Then G20
in the
India
UK.
ended. Yeah, G20 India ended, GPI came in, then the South Korean Seoul summit happened, and a lot of things keep happening. The US Senate comes up with a report. The Japanese Cultural Ministry or Office comes up with a report on Gen AI. So when a lot of documents come, there will be a lot of uncertainty because in my professional view, it is more of a knee-jerk reaction issue with a lot of entities. Not just companies, even with governments. So I'll just stop it here, but maybe
No,
I'll
please
add
go ahead. Maybe you can just finish your point.
Sure, okay,
Yeah.
I'd appreciate that. So to state that very clearly, what is noticeable is that when it comes to the lack of proper regulatory architecture, because even governments are concerned, we just don't wish to be too imposing, right? In March, an advisory came in by our own government of India, and that affected the whole AI community, the open source community, and the concern was very reasonable that if a person who is sitting in Chembur, studying from a local engineering college, will he be, or she, or whosoever, will be able to get approval for their AI systems in Lodi Road, New Delhi, right? That won't be possible. It could apply to somebody in Guwahati, right? Because we are a nomad economy. Everyone is using. So I think this comes in, but knowledge management actually helps a lot because ISO standards are still developing for responsible AI. So, yeah.
Right. The next question that I had, and maybe I'll start off with you, Abhivardhan, is, and it makes my question easier because the points that you make a natural segue to the question that I have. There are piles and piles of regulations that are at various stages of being development, deployment, etc. So how does one look at achieving the trade-off between compliance and innovation? While I'm sure that the world is gung-ho about what AI can achieve, how it can help humanity, how it can help the businesses, but there is an element of compliance and regulation as well. So what could be a trade-off that firms should essentially look at?
So I will give a self-regulatory point of view, not necessarily a top-down approach, because I believe that self-regulation works in some areas, in some areas it might not work. But I think one way which we look at it is, number one, I think firms can try to enable certain market practices which are sustainable, and that can be easily done by leveraging as to what practices are making sense. Because whenever you develop a solution, nowadays, since 2022, when the Gen AI movement gained its, hype or let us say value, after 2023, we saw the rise of important chatbots like ChatGPT and, Perplexity is there, Anthropic is there. One thing we saw that a new term came in various terms and conditions, which we call as AI for preview.
Yeah.
Preview-based AI.
Correct.
Now, what is the legal status of it? Is it a full-range product with specific terms and conditions? Is there any exact liability? We can't say that. Why? They'll say, okay, fine, you're paying us, but still, we are also testing it as a research lab.
Right.
So it's not easy to affirm a sense of liability. So AI for preview is there, AI as a service, AI as an infrastructure as a service. So what happens is that for such nuanced models, a much practical approach is that why don't we focus more about what is the long-term maintenance aspect and how do we keep a track of it internally and then see, okay, fine, what is the auditable aspect and what can be reached out. because a lot of things might be pre-regulatory or more focusing on general governance, because when we gain a lot of experience, when regulators gain a lot of experience, local governments, if necessary, I don't think the Constitution of India doesn't have any specific mandate that digital technology is regulated, so anyone can do it.
Some distance away from that.
Exactly. Union government can do it, state government can do it, anyone can do it. If it is a particular sector like telecom or something, then certain nuances come in the list. But I think the best way is that we need a lot of experience and understanding, both as firms and governments across the world, is to know what we are doing. Because this is a similar question I was asked because I was in a Startup 20, because a great group started by the Indian presidency in Brazil. It was a virtual session, and we were asked feedback about how AI policies are failing in the public sector and all that. So I think once we gain more experience on what's exactly happening, then regulation makes sense. So I think maybe, yeah.
Absolutely. I think very valid points. And just moving on quickly to you, Ashton. In your firm, what are some of the overarching principles that you try to deploy so that you don't go to one extreme? Maybe don't focus so much on let's say innovation at the cost of compliance. So what could be some philosophies that you would recommend?
Okay. So we talked enough about the various regulations, the
Right.
EU AI
Yeah.
Act. There are various acts all over
Absolutely.
the world, etc. The one key aspect is, and this is to maintain the right balance, is again, you need to know your AI infrastructure.
Right.
You need to know your AI systems in and out, and you need to know the regulation in and out.
Right.
Across geographies, across jurisdictions, across industries, whatever it may be, you need to know both of these as the front and the back of your hand. If you are able to get this in the hang of this, and you are able to do the mapping correctly, you've got more than half the job done. Okay, I'll leave it at that because I think we are seriously out of time.
Yeah, I know we are seriously out of time, but I thought I'll just ask one last question, give a minute each, because I just don't want to leave the esteemed panel midway in terms of this interesting conversation that you are having. So while what we discussed was typically of what we have seen till this point in time, how do you portend the future? Are the regulations going to be more stringent? Is AI going to develop much faster than what we have imagined right now? Are new risks going to come up? Not in any particular order, maybe a minute each for you to just conclude.
So I'll just start. Again, everything is always evolving. Innovation is always followed by regulation.
Right.
So innovation happens, regulation follows, and then we need to basically match the two. So there will always be new innovations happening. There will be always new regulations coming for the right reasons to be able to control that and have safeguard rails on it. So that's the bottom line. So we just need to be aware of it and do not allow AI sunshine to happen, as one of the keynote speakers said.
Great points, great points.
So I'll be very quick on this. I think when it comes to AI in general, I think my understanding is that there would be two aspects of regulatory purview. One will be more of a strategic technology sovereignty aspect, which is about emerging tech in AI segment. It applies to semiconductors also, telecom also, right? 6G and all that. For that, it should be a soft touch approach where we are incentivizing our own research labs. And I know that I'm sounding in a way that I'm saying that is strategic, but of course, I'm an Indian, so of course I would advocate for Indian interests. So I'm saying that, of course, that soft touch approach is there. But for traditional technologies in AI, because in fintech and banking, we already have the use of AI, right? In healthcare also. Gen AI just came in and the research has been happening for long. So in that traditional regulation, I think something could be expected, but it has to be governance-centric so that our leaders know what to do and soft touch of all.
Thank you so much. I know the organizers would be giving me dirty looks for prolonging this beyond the scheduled time. I personally feel that I've just scratched the surface of what could have been a very interesting discussion. I'm sure that the panelists would be around, and it would be lovely to catch up with them once we break out for the breaks or for lunch. Thank you. I'm sorry we don't maybe have time for a Q&A, but we can obviously take all your points, your thoughts offline when we converge in the pre-function area. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time and your insights.